Let's begin building a strong, well-functioning core. So we know that a well-functioning core is one that can create pressure in your midsection and control and regulate that pressure. So if we think of your core as, let's say, a pop can. I know we used a Swiss ball before, but a pop can is probably a better analogy. If you take a pop can, you have the lid at the top, you've got the walls around it, and you've got the bottom. And when it's sealed, it's incredibly hard to crush. If you were to lose that pressure, if you were to pop the lid, it's a lot easier to crush. If you change the position and you collapse it a little bit, it's also a lot easier to crush. So the muscles that form your pop can and what we're going to consider as being your core is going to be your diaphragm, which sits at the top. It's going to be just all the muscles around your midsection, which are the walls of the pop can. And it's going to be a smaller diaphragm, your pelvic floor, at the bottom, which faces up against your diaphragm. So those are the muscles that are forming your core that just basically make up that cylinder. Now, if we take that cylinder and we put it out of position, so if that diaphragm is tilted forward or if your pelvis is also anteriorly tilted and you sit like this, it's a lot easier to crush. So when we go through our core work, we're going to start with position first. We're going to make sure things are stacked and that your diaphragm opposes your pelvic floor or that your rib cage opposes your pelvis. Once we get position, we're going to work on breathing. We're going to make sure that that diaphragm can work properly, that you have actual 360-degree expansion around you. When you've got your breathing down, that's when we're going to layer it up and we're going to work on creating pressure, maintaining and controlling the pressure while we do movements. So either from the shoulders and hips, avoiding movement from the spine, or moving the spine itself while holding that pressure. The setup. So you should be able to create intra-abdominal pressure and control it from a wide variety of positions and movements. Like I said, we're going to stack the cards in our favor. So we're going to get down on the floor where there's the least postural demands. We can just focus purely on breathing and creating that pressure, but also where there's the most feedback. You can feel what your ribs and pelvis are doing when you're against the ground. So I have a box to put my feet up. You can do it on a bench, a chair, a couch, anything, but getting that like 90-degree hip, knee, and ankle flexion will help you find that neutral position easier. So let's set up on the ground and we'll go over our position. So if we're going to work our way from the top down, the first thing we're going to think about is head and neck position. From here, I want you to make a double chin. So you're going to tuck your chin into your throat, which lengthens the back of your neck. You're going to think of your neck getting nice and long and decompressed. So we're going to maintain that. The next thing I want you to think about is just having a wide collarbone or a wide back, just resting big and wide and flat on the floor. Moving our way down, we need our rib cage, where our diaphragm is, to face our pelvis, where the pelvic floor is, so that the lid and the bottom of the pop can are facing each other. Now, I don't want you to aggressively crunch it. Let's use your breath. Let's go with an exhale, out your mouth, out pursed lips, all the way to the bottom of your breath. So you're going to keep breathing and breathing and breathing, and you're going to push all that air out and feel what it's like to have your rib cage anchored down to your pelvis. And hopefully you should leave your rib cage facing your pelvis while you breathe. If this position, if you've gotten to a point where you're able to fully breathe and let that rib cage face your pelvis, but you're unable to keep your chin tucked and your neck long, you might just be restricted through certain areas, and that just might not be available to you now. So to make sure you are in the right position, just grab a pillow, put it under your head, and run through the same thing. Chin tucked, wide back and collarbone. Exhale, get those ribs down, facing your pelvis. And now the last piece of the puzzle is your pelvis. So you don't want to be anteriorly tilted and have the bottom sitting open and your low back off the ground. You also don't need to crush your low back into the ground or lift your tailbone off. I just want you to put a mild bit of pressure on your low back and then to make sure those 2 points are opposing each other. So this is going to be the setup. You can start on the ground, but you can also think of this if you're doing it from seated or even setting up for an exercise. Chin tucked, long neck, wide collarbone. Very important to have rib cage down. Use your breath to get it there. Don't try to force it there. A lot of times you'll compensate and you'll do something funny with the rest of your body. And then the last piece is a gentle bit of pressure on your low back into the floor, or you can put a very small towel or dishcloth there and just think of gently pinning it there so someone couldn't pull you away. And this is the position we're going to use to go through our breath work and coordinate our pressure.